ready to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council Residential Districting Commission's East Side Regional Meeting. My name is Monica Sarazuela, and I am one of the commissioners on the CRDC. With me today are my fellow commissioners, Dave Paul, Jeff Cabot, Avery Frost, and Commission Chair Malik Moore. The Council Residential Districting Commission is a collective of residents formed to draw maps, creating 9 residential districts in Columbus. We are excited to be here on the east side of town to hear from you. How do you describe your neighborhood? To which area commission or civic association do you belong? These questions and more are what we hope to answer here today, as well as receive general feedback on the 2021 districting process. We are doing this work ahead of drawing the first drafts of the city district maps to ensure that we know what matters most to you about your city, about your community, and why. A reminder that this meeting is currently live on Facebook, YouTube, and CTV, Columbus's government television channel 3. We will have time for WebEx attendees to speak later in the meeting, but if you're viewing through Facebook or YouTube, please write your questions and thoughts in the comment section. We will be including those comments in our overall feedback. So for those of you who turned into our first 2 meetings of the year, we heard from local speakers about a few different topics relevant to our districting work. And if you'd like to go back and watch any of these presentations, you can find the recordings and the slides from the presentations on the www.columbus.gov/districtingcommission webpage. My fellow commissioners will now briefly highlight some of the key points from the presentations that we've heard at our previous 2 meetings.
Voting Rights Act, presented by Kyle Strickland. In the act, the Voting Rights Act requires our cities' districts to be drawn fairly, considering the racial makeup and diversity of the proposed district. Gerrymandering, aka packing, is something to avoid in our work. We want our districts to be proportionate to the electorate.
Ms. Frost, I'm sorry, are you looking for someone in particular? Are you trying to share your screen?
No, next it looks like Dave talks about the area commissions.
Dave, I'll try to unmute him, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes,
we can hear
Thank you. Yes, very good, thank you. We received a presentation by David Huey of the Neighborhood Services Organization, and he explained that there are currently 21 area commissions recognized by the City of Columbus and supported by the Department of Neighborhoods. There are also hundreds of civic associations, block watch groups, and other organizations throughout the city. These organizations serve as catalysts to change not only their neighborhood, but also to bring about change at City Hall and beyond.
The city. They described redlining and the construction of the interstate system, which drastically altered some of our neighborhoods, specifically our neighborhoods of color, the effects of which can still be seen today. And Columbus has grown substantially and continues to be one of the fastest growing cities in the Midwest. Nope.
Hey, Malik, I don't think we can hear you.
You are unmuted, Malik. Are you using the proper audio option? If you click that arrow next to the mute button there at the bottom of your screen. Are you using the system setting and Realtek audio? Or
Angela has me muted.
No, I don't have anyone muted. Everyone's good. You can unmute yourselves.
So I'll go ahead and take the part about Columbus neighborhoods that was presented by Doreen Sauer at our last meeting. Our neighborhoods are diverse and have transformed over the years. Each part of town has its own unique history that has shaped what we see today. We recognize it is important to consider the differences and similarities between neighborhoods when drawing these districts.
Great, thank you, everyone. Again, you can view all of these presentations in full on the CRDC webpage. So before we move into the main discussion this evening, we have a short presentation from Nia Walters, in-house counsel and legal analyst of the City of Columbus City Council, to teach us about the residential districting survey.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay. I'm sorry, we're having some WebEx issues today. Good evening, my name is Nia Walters, and I'm the project lead for the Council Resolution Commission.
I can no longer hear her.
Good evening, everyone. If you could just please wait momentarily while we kind of get our internet issues fixed at the moment.
Hey
Thank
guys,
you.
we just paused the meeting, so it's not being streamed right now, correct?
I paused the recording. Lucy, let me check with CTV. One moment, please.
Thank you. I'm not sure why we're having these connectivity issues. I have the hotspot on, but I know the Wi-Fi here is not that good. I'm going to try to restart the hotspot and see what I can do.
Lucy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you
Okay.
like for me to resume the recording?
Can I,
Just give us one more second to hear if we can hear audio.
Oh, no
Can you guys hear
problem.
me?
I just didn't. I can hear you now. Thank you. Just let me know when.
Okay, wonderful.
Testing audio. Hopefully you can hear me.
Testing audio.
Yes, Mr. Paul, we can hear you. Malik, can you test your audio, please? Monica, can we test your audio, please?
testing, testing?
Okay, great. And Mr. Moore, are we still having issues with yours? I've not been able to hear you yet. Mr. Moore, I may have you back out of the meeting and come back in. Just leave the meeting and click that link again.
He's connecting to a new Wi-Fi network, so just one
Okay.
second.
No problem at all. We also have the call-in option that I can assist him with if he needs to use his cell phone for his audio.
Everyone for your patience tonight. Before we move into the main discussion, we have again a short presentation from Nia Walters, in-house counsel and legal analyst of Columbus City Council, to teach us about the residential districting survey that we are promoting in conjunction with our weekly meetings. Nia, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nia Walters, and I'm the project lead for the Council Residential Districting Commission. Tonight, I will be introducing our survey. This survey is designed to solicit feedback from you, our residents, on what you think is important for the CRDC to consider when they are drafting the maps that will produce 9 residential districts for council. This is a historical moment for our city, and we cannot do it without hearing from the voices that matter most. This survey consists of general and specific questions around districting as well as demographic information. There are a couple ways to access the survey. You can visit the CRDC website at www.columbus.gov/districtingcommission, or you can go directly to the survey link at www.surveymonkey.com/r/Columbus districts. Your participation in this survey and this process will help to ensure that the final map is a reflection of the community's voice. I will now do a brief screen share of how to see where you can go to get the survey. Ms. Angela, could you please provide me with screen sharing capabilities?
Yes, Naya, you'll need to turn on your camera. You should be all set now.
Thank you. You should all now be able to see my screen, and I am at the Council Residential Districting Commission website. So if you start at the top and you scroll down, you will be able to see the CRDC community meeting series, the meeting videos, and then if you scroll down a little further, you will see take the CRDC survey, and you can click that link to go to the survey directly. And then if you want to see this survey, you will go to the link that I also provided, and this will take you to the survey, and you can begin filling out here. We would really appreciate anyone who takes time to fill out this survey to help us and help the commission draw the maps that will secure the 9 future council districts. And that is all for me tonight. Thank you very much for your time, and fill out the survey.
Thank you, Naya. And again, we hope that everyone here will fill out the survey. Again, the website where you can access it is www.columbus.gov/districting commission. All right, so now we are going to move on to our guest speaker portion of the agenda. We are here to hear more about the east side of the city, and we invited a few of our area commission chairs in the east region of town to speak and share with us their thoughts about districting, what is most important to their organization, and anything else relevant to the work of the CRDC. So I am going to ask Anthony Reif with the Greater Southeast Area Commission to present first this evening.
Okay.
Anthony, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I was hoping to let somebody else go first so I could kind of see how it would go. A couple of things that the Greater Southeast Area Commission is that's important to us is relieving the congestion along our major corridors, which is Gender Road and South Hamilton Road, and resources for our families, recreational outlets, and economic development, and supporting and increasing businesses and that are currently in our area. A portion of our area is South Hamilton Road, right around Eastland Mall, or across from Eastland Mall, and that area has seen a significant downturn with the loss of businesses, and so that's something we would like to see some more development in that area. And not sure. I'm not sure what else you're looking for.
Thank you, Anthony. If it's okay with you, we can have, maybe some of the other area commissioners speak, and then we'll kind of ask some general questions to each of you at the end.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Next, I'd like to have Jennifer Chamberlain with the Far East Area Commission speak to us this evening.
Good evening. The Far East Area Commission would like to thank Chair Moore and other commission members of the redistricting committee for their work and taking the time to listen to the commissions during this historic process of determining our districts for council. And we recognize and encourage City Council in its attempts to better represent and provide a more balanced means of representing communities on council. I'd like to give you a little background on the Far East Area Commission and surrounding organizations that make up our vast area. This year, the Far East Area Commission is celebrating its 10th year as a commission. We've achieved much over the years with the help of our city administrators, city council, CPD, our community, and our leaders. The Far East Side has seen a drastic decline in business leaving our area. This is one of the primary reasons we started the commission. The need for stabilizing and revitalizing the Greater East Side is paramount to us. We would like to become an opportunity area with city-directed grants and projects. Our need for youth programs, recreation centers, social services, and safety initiatives are greatly needed and unfulfilled right now. This is why the redistricting is so important. We would ask that the Greater East Side have a direct representative, which will result in meaningful and realized opportunities for the community. A little information for you. The Far East Side Area Commission, with the partnership of the Mid-East Area Commission and the Greater Southeast Area Commission, have formed the Greater East Side Coalition. The need for our three commissions to come together and form a coalition exemplifies that our needs are not being acknowledged with us acting singularly. Our mission for the Greater East Side Coalition is to advocate, promote, sustain, and improve communities on the Greater East Side. Together, our three commissions have a population of over 150,000 residents. We represent 40 square miles of the city with over 61,000 households. And I can individually break that down for you by commissions. If you would like that later, I could provide that to you or send it to you. The Greater East Side numbers are dismal. Our unemployment is almost double the average in the city of Columbus. Our evictions, infant mortality, and opioid numbers remain at crisis levels. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and efforts such as replacing the Bryce Road Bridge and the Far East Area Freeway project is stagnant. Housing concerns are alarming. Our zone, which is Zone 2, leads the city with Priority 1 and Priority 2 dispatch calls for service. Our youth have nowhere to go with no programs for the Far East and no recreation centers. We are working hard in our communities, but we need to have help to stabilize and revitalize the Far East Side. And we present this to you in hopes that this redistricting will enable us with the same opportunities that other parts of the city currently have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your comments this evening. Next, I'd like to invite Clay Barnes with the Mid-East Area Commission. Clay?
I love following Jennifer because she is so detailed, and she is my partner in crime, along with Anthony in the Greater East Side Coalition. The MAC is the newest commission that has been established by the city. We represent approximately 50,000 residents here on our side, in our part of the East Side. What's the most important thing for the Mideast, as well as I would say all the East Side, is to change the perception that economic development policies and practices in our area are not as good, or the investment not as strong as in other parts of the city. We'd also like to be known as a great, affordable, accessible place to work, live, and worship. Being on the East Side, you have all of that. What issues that we are particularly concerned about is the crime in our area. As Jennifer told you, we have a lot of police runs in our area. And we think here in the Mid-East that a lot of this was due to the revitalization and gentrification that's being done in the downtown and around the Children's Hospital area that is forcing or allowing crime to come down East Livingston Avenue. And we need to have that recognized and steps taken to reduce and eliminate this concern, like they did in Wyland Park and in the areas around Children's Hospital. We need to have that focus too. Another concern we have is traffic. It's in the form of increased speeding, primarily down East Livingston Avenue, but also on our residential streets. This has caused a lot of property-related accidents in our areas. And lastly, for the Mideast in particular, is that while we welcome low-income housing and we want everyone to have a place to live, we are inundated with low-income housing, and we just feel we can't handle anymore. And it would be nice if we could have the city do some emphasis on low-income housing condition, absentee landlords, tenants living in single-family housing but not being educated as to what's being expected in living in a neighborhood, such as trash and bulk pickup, parking in yards, loud music, basketball hoops in the street. All of those sorts of things are concerns that we have. What's important for you to consider when creating these districts, the battle is really fought on the neighborhood block watch civic associations and commissions. We fight the battles. We're the foot soldiers, and we don't mind doing that. But what we don't have is the power, which you have heard from other presenters, and the influence at the higher decision-making levels. District council representation is essential as the budget and the citywide economic and social programming is negotiated and determined at that level. And what would we like to see out of this districting process? As Jennifer said, we're part of a coalition that represents over 150,000 people. We would like to be assured that the East Side representative lives in our area, and that as the number of representatives that will represent the East Side is proportional to the number of the population in the city of Columbus. So that doesn't mean you may need to have 2 or 3 people here. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, area commissioners, again, for being with us here this evening. I'm going to turn it over to see if any of my fellow commissioners have any questions. Commissioner Paul.
Hello. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm familiar with what you've spoken about, both Jennifer and Quay, and hello again. I think we've met in the past. I'm familiar with the phenomenon you're speaking about in terms of you're having formed a coalition. As you may recall, I've been involved with a coalition of sorts called the Northwood Community Council on the north side of Columbus for a long time. One of the things that we've realized is that given the size of that coalition and the fact we need to create 9 districts in the city, it's likely that our coalition will find itself with, as you mentioned a moment ago, at least 2 council members that represent a portion of that coalition. In effect, we will need to establish most likely lines somewhere within your coalition that have the effect of dividing the coalition, at least in terms of who their representatives are at City Council. I'm just wondering if you can help us understand what geographical concerns or other concerns there might be that we might consider as we get into the process to do that in a smart and fair way. Again, we're encountering the same thing in Northland with what was at one time 15% of the population. And we're trying to decide what would make sense in terms of neighborhoods that might belong in one district or the other. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
I would say, this is Quay from the Mideast. Both Jennifer and Anthony have a lot of space, and I'll let them talk to how much room they have to have development come in. My commission, on the other hand, is very neighborhood heavy. We're right next to each other, and there isn't much space for development. It's more for renovation and revitalization. So that might be the difference between the 2 of us, but Jennifer might have more to say.
I agree with Quay. The Far East and the greater Southeast still have a lot of land that is coming up soon to be developed. And I think with that, we'll probably see a large percentage of it move towards apartments. So most likely our population will increase a lot more. And also we've been partnering and communicating as stakeholders for the East-West corridor. And I guess that hasn't been determined whether or not it'll go take the East Main Street or East Broad Street component. I don't know if that will make any kind of a difference. I would suspect that whichever street that is realized, there's going to be a large population shift to that particular corridor street. Something just to take into account.
Anthony, I didn't mean to leave you out of the discussion by any means. Did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I think both Quay and Jennifer covered it.
Okay, thank you. It's important for us to realize we all live in districts. We live in neighborhoods that have multiple representatives and overlapping districts and so forth. So the fact we might end up with more than one city council member that represents, in effect, your coalition isn't necessarily a problem, but I think we want to be smart about it and make sure that we're giving these districts a lot of thought. Again, so as not to divide them arbitrarily or in ways that cause you problems or limit cooperation between council members or whatever. So I thank you for your time and your answers. And I'll turn it back over to Monica.
Thank you. I do know our commission chair, Malik Moore, has a question.
Yeah, first, I want to thank Commissioner Barnes, Chamberlain, and Rice for all this good information. And I heard you mention, Commissioner Chamberlain, 150,000 people in your collective coalition. And then you referenced some maps that you might be able to share. And I just wanted to see if I should anticipate that we would have those maps shared with us. And you made a general reference of the collective square mileage within the three coalitions. What was that number?
The square mileage is at 40 square miles. It was like 39.72.
Yeah. Well, just excellent information, and thank you for helping us to put this into the process. These are all things that we need to consider. So thank you also so much.
You're welcome.
Do any other commissioners have questions this evening?
Not a question, but just a comment. The census numbers aren't out yet, but it is anticipated that each district will have to be around 100,000 Columbus residents. And the charter says that the smallest district and the largest district can be no more than 1% different, which is a pretty high standard. State legislative districts could vary by 5%. But our charter is pretty specific. So it's going to be quite a challenge. Obviously, if you've got a coalition of 150,000 residents, they're not all going to be able to be in the same district. So it'll be interesting to see how this map gets drawn. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have one question, and I guess I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but could you share a little bit more about, maybe the new American population that lives over on the east side? I do know that around the Eastland area, we do have some great immigrant-owned businesses. So I'd love to kind of hear more about the populations that live over in the communities.
In the Far East, we have a large Nepali and Somali community, and I believe the Greater Southeast does too. Quay, I'm not sure. Quay's area is so dense and established. I'm not sure. The neighborhoods have been established for a long time. I'm not sure what what the population is there for new Americans.
We don't have too many new Americans. We are getting some Asian because of our Buddhist temple over here, but outside of that, no.
I think what happened is in the greater Southeast and in the Far East with the new development that's come along as housing is put up in our areas, that we're seeing a large percentage of that new population coming in being new American. And I think I would add, I'm speaking for myself, but as far as our three commissions going and having a coalition that represents kind of all three of us as a partnership, I don't think any of us have a problem with it being split and would recognize that. And we would be more than, I think, happy to have two council representatives that would be working with our coalition. So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other additional comments or questions from commissioners this evening?
Hi, yes, this is Avery, real fast. What are, okay, I guess it's kind of two-part. You've all kind of talked about it a little bit. So we know that the census data hasn't come in yet, but knowing how the population in your area is shifting, can you kind of highlight any population centers that may exist? And then are there some natural natural segmentations that are possible? So like we know that maybe east and west of Alum Creek, or of James Road, or of 70, north and south of I-70, for instance. Are there any specific physical boundaries that you might be able to help us kind of highlight in the area?
Well, Miss Avery, I think I had you in one of my classes at some point, Miss Avery. In fact, I know I did. One of the boundaries that we could possibly think of, and Anthony and Jennifer, let me know if you feel that way, is Refugee Road to the south, Anthony, maybe. And for Jennifer, I guess pretty much where your boundary is now, which is on the other east of Big Walnut Creek. What do you think?
I don't, if I turn my computer, I don't know if you could see my screen, but I have a map that shows the MAC, the FEAC, and the GSEAC all together, and it's a pretty good image. And I think there's two things that are really sticking out, and one is the 270, where 270 comes around, and then the other is probably maybe east-west would be probably Route 70, would you say? But
You'd have to point it down a little bit farther, Jennifer. But yeah, I think I agree with the east-west with 70 would probably be a good divider to try and somewhat equally split the three commission areas to have representation for all three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
if I were to share the information that I have, who would I send it to, or where would I send it to? Should I send it to Stanley?
You can send it to Stanley, or CRDC at columbus.gov is our general districting commission.
Can you repeat that again?
Inbox. Yep, CRDC at columbus.gov.
Okay.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. The council members that will be selected, they will be from our area. In other words, the requirement will have to be that they be residents of the east side or okay. So that is true.
So there is a residency requirement for the 9 districts that we create. So, however the east side is districted, they would have to live in that specific district.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions, comments for our, go ahead.
I don't know how quickly you get the email, and I just sent the map, and I don't know if that would give you a better idea.
Yeah, we will check it after this meeting, but Jennifer, thank you so much for sending that. We really appreciate that. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to thank Commissioner Rife, Chamberlain, and Barnes for being with here this evening, and for all that you do for our area commissions and your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right. Thank you. All right. We are now going to move into our Q&A session with some of our attendees this evening. A few notes and reminders before we begin. For speaking time, in order to be respectful of our time here this evening, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Hand raising, for those that are joining us on WebEx, we will use the hand raising feature to call on speakers. Lucy will explain how to do that now. Lucy?
Hi, everyone. So for those who are attending via WebEx, if you look at the bottom right part of your screen, there should be a little hand button. It says raise hand when you put your cursor over it. If you click that, you will be raising your hand. You will be in the queue to speak. And when you are done, you will hit that button again, and it will lower your hand so that you're no longer in the line.
Thank you, Lucy. And for those of you who would rather send your thoughts and responses via email, again, you can send those to CRDC@columbus.gov. And for those viewing on Facebook or YouTube, please send comments in the comment section, or again, use that same email, CRDC@columbus.gov. As we said earlier, we are here tonight to hear from you. And if you look at the screen, you will see hopefully a few questions that will pop up that we hope that you'll be able to help answer for us. Again, your input is going to really help guide our work. And I will go ahead and read each of those questions now. So first question, what is the most important defining characteristic of your neighborhood? What neighborhoods do you consider to be part of your community? What are the biggest needs you see in your community currently? What are the critical issues you see potentially arising in the next 10 years in your community? And do you think the city of Columbus is aware and acting on the issues facing your neighborhood? So again, please use the raise the hand feature to share your comments, questions, and feedback. And reminder to please keep your comments under 3 minutes. And I will turn it over to Lucy and Angela to help moderate this.
And just a reminder that if you want to speak, you would raise your hand, and then we'll click on you. So the first hand I do see is Ms. Felicia Saunders. So I think you have the ability to unmute yourself and go ahead and go for it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having this forum tonight. My concern is I'm the president of the East Haven Civic Association, and we're over here. My boundaries are Courtright Grove Road to Refugee Road, back down College into James Road, back into East Haven. And my concern is we're getting a lot of development over here. We're getting senior citizen living. We had Elam Estates put in several years ago. Now we're getting more senior citizen development, and we're also getting 14 new homes put in. My concern is we don't have a rec center. or anything over here for our youth to do. And our crime has went down tremendously because of our block watch and the passion that our neighbors have as far as taking back our community and dealing with some of the crime issues. But our children need something to do. There was some programs set up where they were going to do pop-ups at the schools for the summer at our East Haven Elementary School, but COVID hit and that kind of went to the wayside. So I was just wondering, I was told that they're not building any new rec centers after Linden's beautiful rec center was built and the Driving Park beautiful rec center was built. And I just feel like there's nothing on the Southeast side for these children and families to do. We need something over here. So I was just wondering if that is something that could be brought up to City Council's attention with the districts being developed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Saunders, again, for being here with us tonight and sharing your comments and concerns. I know that we have City Council staff who are, listening with us this evening, and so I want to make sure that they're taking note of this and can hopefully follow up with you on that. I do have a question kind of back to you. So do you feel that you have a direct line to someone on Columbus City Council that you feel like you can communicate these things with currently?
No, I don't. It used to be Tony Collins, but he left, and after that, the connection got lost.
Great, thank you.
And so outside of Rexham Park, is there anyone that you feel that you can reach out to within the city? And if not, can we help to facilitate a connection?
I would appreciate if you could. I know we do have directions for youth in our neighborhood, but they only able to take 300 homes. They're expanding. There was 80 homes they were able to help, with, but now they're expanding, so they're looking to be able to take care of 300 homes. But that's still just not enough. So if I can get some guidance on something we can do for our youth, because I'm afraid with the crime issues going on with our youth today, it may get worse, it may not. We got a lot of prayer over here in East Haven. And plus we believe in snitching over here. So if you come to East Haven and try and do something wrong, we definitely gonna tell on you.
Right. And so
I hear your proactive concern. I hear your awareness of the community. To Commissioner Sarah as well as point, we have several members of City Council on the call tonight. And we will have folks reaching out directly to you. And I just want to make sure I heard you right. You're the president of the East, what is it called? The Citizens Association?
East Haven Civic Association.
East Haven Civic Association. Yes, and so we will make sure that they have a direct line to you. There's several opportunities throughout the city for camps and activities. Some of them are remote, but I hear your need for engagement, and I hear you have the ability to connect with the kids in your community. So we'll make sure that there are pathways to and from the East Haven Civic Association and the City of Columbus as well. And I think that's a big part of what we're doing as a council. As a commission is really beginning to hear these voices and lift them up. Okay. So thank you.
Chair Moore, may I also comment?
Please.
I'm certainly not going to try to speak for City Council, but I thought I would share a little bit of perspective as a former Recreation Parks Commission president and member. Up until actually the beginning of last year, you mentioned Tony Collins, who was the director of Recreation and Parks and a very effective and good director. And since his departure, Paul Rakowski, who was assistant director, has been serving as interim director and doing a very good job of that as well. And of course, that was also right about the time that COVID hit. So a lot of things changed and a lot of things kind of got pushed temporarily to the side simply because they needed to focus on reacting to the emergency. I do think, though, that Director Rakowski, it would be responsive if you were to reach out to him. Until very recently, Sophia Fiftner was the assistant director who was in charge of community outreach. She was also very effective. She's just left Recreation and Parks, and I think there are now 2 people who've replaced her. But I would encourage you also to go ahead and get in touch with Paul Rakowski's office at Recreation Parks, because I think you'd find him responsive. And certainly, again, your city council members can help make that connection. But I just did want to mention that with Tony's departure, it almost coincided with the beginning of the pandemic, and that really kind of threw a loop into a lot of things. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, great, thank you. Are there any other individuals on the WebEx who wish to share your comments? Again, please use the raise hand feature, and Lucy will be able to call on you. In the meantime, I do want to read some of the Facebook comments that we've received. I believe an individual said, beyond significant Nepali and Somali communities on the Far East Side, we have the largest Bengalese and, oh goodness, I'm going to mispronounce this, Mauritanian communities across Ohio and East Columbus, as well as Macedonian, Liberian, and diverse Latino communities. Their community spread is reflected in the number of businesses, school attendance, and family outings during holidays and celebrations. And across the Far East, the Mideast, and the Southeast areas, New American communities represent a good chunk of both homeowners, renters, business owners, and school attendants, from Livingston and Refugee to Gender and Bruce, et cetera. And I agree that given the size of the area, 2 districts would make sense. And there was also another comment, while not necessarily the east side, this individual commented that the Hilltop needs a swimming pool and a skate park, and also Westgate Park needs renamed to the Hilltop Park. So we will keep that in mind when we have our meeting on the west side here in a few weeks. All right. Any additional comments, hands raised at the time for individuals who wish to speak this evening? No? All right. Okay. Does anyone have any additional kind of questions for the group while we're here this evening?
So those Facebook comments from Mr. Ibrahim Assal, I wish we could dig in and hear more of what he shared. He seems to have a finger on the pulse. And I'm not sure if he's able to call in the WebEx or if he's limited to just Facebook right now. But
He was
Ibrahima,
able to
if
call
you're
in,
able
sir.
to.
Mr. Moore,
Oh,
he is able to
yes.
call in. He's listed as an attendee. Would you like for me to unmute him at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me make sure I have the right person. I just have a first name. Sir, you are unmuted.
Oh, hello.
Mr. Sal, how are you, sir?
I'm very good, Ms. J. How are you? I didn't realize
very well. This
I
is
could
Malik
talk.
Moore.
And nothing else was working on the WebEx, so I just wanted to share my comments there on Facebook.
Listen, you have a very powerful voice, right? You're sharing insights we need. And so I want to encourage you to lift up more of the detail you shared in Facebook through your written comment. So you have the floor, and I want you to share as much as you can. I see you've even added to those comments. So please lift up and share some of the things that you've already shared via Facebook.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to share some of those points, given kind of the question and response, and I enjoyed the conversations and the information shared. Just more insight on what the greater East Side looks like. As the 3 great representatives, different chairs of commissions have stated. I just wanted to add to their points that it's extremely diverse, very big. But it's also has a lot of challenges, including I think you all kind of know the Eastland area that both has some small businesses, but it's a big eyesore on the East Side. And I think because of the lack of kind of the needed investment that people here really do need, which is kind of just more small businesses and not a big mall. I I think we're kind of missing the mark on there. I think also every once in a while, it seems like a pothole can last a good 6 months before someone realizes that it's there. Especially in that Bryce to 70 east or west. It's usually very packed. It's usually very dangerous. And also places like Walnut Ridge, I'm glad finally there's a sidewalk there that kids are able to walk from home to school without getting run over. But there are other schools, elementary and middle, around the area that don't have sidewalks, that people speed all the time off Livingston. And it's some of those things that I wish there were more amplified voices to be able to not talk about these big high-end issues that affect the rest of the city, but just these hyper-focused issues that affect the residents of this part of this part of town. So just added some other things on the Facebook there that hopefully it becomes part of the record. You're able to make the best informed decision with different voices across the east side.
Yes. So as you share these things, Mr. Sal, you shared about the Mauritanian community, the Liberian community, and as I look at a historically African-American community, I'm curious when we look at the census data, from your insight, and I'm not asking you to speak for all in your community, do you see that, how might folks on the census report if they're coming here as first-generation Africans? Do they see themselves as African-American? Do they see themselves as other? I'm curious as we begin to decipher the data, how we might need to disaggregate some of the information we see rolled up in the east side. It might have a little more nuance, I'm imagining.
Right. And this was a big battle that me and a few other people had when we were encouraging people around Columbus to sign to contribute in the census. That instead of going for the usual suspect boxes, that it's better to say other and then specify what you are, because that in the future will allow for a better picture and a reflection through the census of the diversity that lives in the city. And I think for me anyway, I went to other and put myself as Senegalese American. And I know some of the Liberian community members where in Columbus, we have the largest Liberian community in Ohio, and probably 80% of them live within a 10-mile radius on the east side of Columbus. But right now, they've been trying to get a community center for their elderly and young people. But it's one of those battles within the community that you never hear of because they're a small community that's underrepresented, or they kind of disappear within the sea of all these other big groups that have more amplified voices. So it was something that we tried to do. Hopefully, we were somewhat successful, and hopefully, some of that more specifically diverse communities will kind of make their way out of the census. But beyond that, we know where the community members are, and we'd be able to do hyper-focalized surveys if we needed to. As part of the African Immigrants Commission that I'm on, representing Africans across the state.
Yes, and that's a statewide position, right? So thank you, and I want to ask for your support in making sure folks from the New American community know that we're specifically reaching out and wanting to lift up those voices. We have a session actually scheduled specifically to hear those voices and hopefully lift up more of those nuances that you've shared this evening. And so I want to encourage you to continue to join us on these calls. I thank you for your work throughout Columbus and throughout the state. And if you could, please be a voice of this redistricting commission and invite others, like you said, whose voices are often muffled. Invite them to please join these calls and be a part of this process.
Absolutely. I appreciate your work and the work of the rest of the group.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Sal, I do have one, follow-up question. I know you noted in your Facebook comment about that this district, dividing the east side into two districts makes sense. Do do you have any thoughts of, where you think maybe that we could think about, dividing the line?
Right. I think to the point, and I think it was you or someone else on the call that asked.
Mr. So, did we lose you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize when I got muted. I think because it stretches from the Livingston area corridor all the way down to Wagner, past Reynoldsburg, and through Whitehall, as well as down to basically the border of Canal Winchester. I think I would rely on the more collected and informed information that this group has to be able to do that. But I think wherever that natural split happens, and I'm not advocating for a split, not that there is one, but I think because it's such a vast area with limited transportation options other than a personal vehicle, I think wherever that natural split happens, to be able to make sure that both resources and proper advocacy where it fits happens, because obviously people on the border of Canal don't have the same issues as those at the border of Fairfield County. So just kind of wherever that happens, because it's so big. And I would rely on you all to kind of make that best informed decision, because it does affect the rest of the city as well. And so whatever that looks like, obviously if I think you all I just missed the mark. I will let you know you missed the mark, but I think you all make the best decision for not only people on the east side, but the rest of the city.
Thank you.
If I could just add, I'll be brief because I know we're running out of time here. I just wanted to say how much what you've described is true, I think, in other parts of the city as well. Up on the north side, as I mentioned, the Northland area, we have a very similar phenomenon. We're becoming much more diverse. And we also have, again, very natural divisions that we could perhaps consider. The new Hamilton Road developing areas to the east versus the older neighborhoods to the west of Northland and that sort of thing. So we appreciate your having clearly already given this some thought, and we'll look forward to talking with you again, hopefully, as this process unfolds to help us make some good decisions along the way. So thank you, Mr. Sal.
One more question before we let you go, Mr. Sal. I'm just curious to hear what you see as critical issues. We've heard from the commissioners, and we've heard through a lens of folks that might have been native, folks that are native to our community. But as you look through the lens of new Americans, what would be some of the critical issues you see potentially arising in the next 10 years within your community?
You are unmuted, sir. I've unmuted you.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was trying to keep my one twin from waking up the other.
Yeah, no, I'm no problem repeating it. I'm just, we've heard tonight from commissioners, they shared some valuable insight. I've heard economic development, I've heard congestion. These are all valid things. And in addition to those things being valid, if we were to look through a lens of those who live on that side of town that are new Americans, I'm curious to hear what might be lifted up as critical issues throughout the new American communities, and looking 10 years down the line, what things we might foresee becoming more critical issues from that lens.
Right, no, absolutely. And obviously there are more qualified people to be able to answer that question. And I'm sure there are insights that the area commission chairs would be able to give. Just from my perspective and from the communities that I am well versed in, have these conversations. And I think both transportation and housing are going to continue to be problems unless addressed. I think there is a challenge in the city anyway, in particular in the east side, because that's what I understand of the lack of building multifamily housing that community members willing and needing housing specifically need, right? It's not it's not a condo or an apartment with 2 bedrooms. It's a multifamily housing because there are multifamily units needing housing. And that is what we don't have enough of. And people resort to either going the more expensive route, which is buying land and being able to build their houses themselves. And not everyone has that resource, or waiting until something you need comes around. Obviously, in this context where prices are not even past the roof, but nowhere near what the eye can see, I think a lot of people no longer have that option. And so that's going to continue to be a problem, that multifamily housing or lack thereof. Also with transportation, because it's a wide area. And if you don't have a car on the east side, you're not getting far. Just with distance between one CODA bus stop and the next time you see one is a good 40 minutes. It has nothing to do, I have no beef with CODA. It's just, that's what I see. That's what I've experienced. That's what other people have told me. So the lack of effective public transportation is also a deterrence to people wanting to live elsewhere, or either relying on family members who sometimes don't have the time because they're working on either further southeast, or have a job at another part of town. And so it becomes a barrier to people that don't have an option to know that their public transportation is not an option. And so housing and public transportation, I'd say, are the biggest issues that I've observed from both experience and what other people have said.
And I appreciate your disclaimer that you're not speaking for a whole community. The community is not a monolith. And so at that time, it's a great plug for the survey link that's available. Anybody on this call should be able to see that they can go ahead and complete that survey link, surveymonkey.com/r/Columbus districts. That will be another tool we're using to lift up the voices of these communities and their perspective. So you're not speaking for a whole group of people. I appreciate you again, Mr. Sal. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Moore.
All right, I'd like to remind attendees again, if you are on the WebEx, to please click the raise the hand button in the right-hand corner of the screen. And those who are attending via YouTube or Facebook Live, to please feel free to add comments in the comment section. Lucy, is there anyone who currently has their hand raised?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, if there are no additional comments or questions from the public, I'd like to just once again thank our community members, our area commissioners, for your engagement this evening in this discussion. We have completed the community discussion portion of our meeting, and we will be continuing on to a working session. And we invite viewers to stay on, but want to share the following information before we transition into this working session. So our next meeting will be 1 week from today, Wednesday, June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. Focus on the west side of the city. All are invited, but again, we would especially welcome the attendance of our west side residents, and look out for more information on how to join that meeting, which will be coming out soon. Again, we're going to reiterate that please take the survey. You can find the survey link and more information about the districting work on the CRDC website. Again, that's www.columbus.gov/districting commission. Please share that survey with your networks. Again, the more participation, the better. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email crdc@columbus.gov. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. Chair Moore, I will turn the floor over to you for our working session.
Commissioner Sarazuela, I just want to thank you again for tonight's meeting. Those who have remained on the call, I want to thank you for joining us online for our meeting session. This is the time where the commissioners coordinate our plans, we share our ideas and strategies, and we try to set ourselves up to effectively move our charter work forward. And so today what we want to look into, and forgive me if I'm not looking at the camera, because again, this is the working meeting part of this, of our session. And so I'm really addressing the commissioners. And so I want to look at the GIS mapping and the ESRI tool. I think we might have expectations of it and ideas of how we're going to work with it. But I also believe that what we think might be different than the reality. And so I know we had Commissioner Sarazuela, you jumped up and you stepped up and you're going to lead the effort. I'm hoping we have at least one of our ambassadors on the call. And if you are, please make your presence known, because at this time I want to find additional support who will go through the process of examining the layers. And then I wanted to look into that process of what it looks like to examine the layers. So I had a conversation earlier thinking that what we would do is be able to kind of hit switches and buttons and see maps change like I see on CSI, but I think it's going to be a little different. And so I want us to just have the reality of how it's going to work. And I want to also invite Nia Walters, our legal counsel, to share as the steward and the keeper of the GIS tool. Maybe you could share a little bit of how the tool is going to work, Nia, and what we'll have access to.
Of course.
And I'll mute myself. So when I get
Good morning, or good morning, good evening, commissioners. So yeah, a little bit about the ESRI GIS tool. So we have obtained 2 licenses, one license for myself and one license for a representative from the Department of Technology for the city, who will be assisting us with drawing the maps. Essentially, the function of the ESRI tool is you all will be able to see what's on the screen, and I'll share that, but you will essentially be directing me to move the map and move the lines as we go. And so you will tell me what to do, but you will not actually be the person that is kind of controlling us. You'll be giving me instruction and direction on how you like the lines moved. And so with that, there are a certain number of layers that are included. And I worked with the Department of Technology to get some layers added, which I will share with you all when we do our demo. I intend to do the demo of the ESRI tool, probably our first meeting once we have completed all of the community meetings. Just because I think it would be the most useful when we get ready to start drawing the maps. You guys to get a demo. I will ask our counterpart from DOT to come in and give a demo so you all can see how the tool works. I've been playing with it for a little while now and getting to know how it's used. So that is kind of how that will work. There are different layers that they have access to. I am not aware of all the layers they have access to. I have added some layers to the playtest version of it in anticipation of what I think we will need. But I am not sure of all things they have. So if there are layers that are not in the playtest version, which will be shown to you during the demo, feel free to let me know what layers you're looking for, and I can reach out to our DOT counterparts and see if they have access to other layers, other types of layers that you are looking for.
So I might be using
So I may be using the wrong language when I say layers, and I might, but please correct me. As we work with the map, and let's say if we're talking and we envision an area being a district, I'm guessing the way I see it is the layer would tell me I've just rolled in something that's 200,000 people. Then to Jeff's point, that can't be the layer I want because it's greater than 1%. So I would have to then go in and rejigger it to make the boundaries different. So every time I change the layers, do I see the new population? Is it automatic?
So let me do a little bit of clarification. The layers are the layers that are kind of stacked on top of each individual thing. So you can see the different properties of the district. There's a bottom layer that shows you the property district, like it shows you the population, et cetera. And so when you do that, you can do a district, you can create it with 100,000 people, or if you do more than that, and then if you want to keep this is just that you want, you can lock it so that one stays locked. And then you can continue to play around with the other areas on the map. But the layers are basically embedded in the map. So when you see the map, you're just seeing one map, but you're seeing all the different layers on the map. So it'll show you like roadways and boundaries, and if you want area commissions or things like that, those things will be on there so you can see them on the map, and then you are kind of drawing over top of all those layers. Does that make sense?
Chair,
It makes sense. I still have questions though.
Chair Moore, I think the word you're looking for is polygons, because the layers, as you said, they contain the data, and there are multiple layers with different characteristics. But what we are actually trying to define are the shapes or polygons
Right.
that incorporate certain populations. And from what I've seen, yes, if we change the polygons, the population data will change dynamically to show us
Real time.
what the result is.
Yep.
That's correct, Commissioner.
And so I could move that polygon a little bit to the right and see numbers change and a little bit to the left.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what happens, you'll have they say a hand drawing tool, and you can cover an area, like think of when you're doing a text box, but a text box over an area, and then it'll click in on that area. And then you're able to kind of move it a little bit over, a little bit to the up or down or to the left. And that it won't be unmovable unless you lock it. And then you obviously can unlock it and move it again to see if different things. But the main thing that you should know is that when you do it, nothing is permanent per se unless you lock it. But you can continue to do and move it around as you so choose.
And so we could look at the map with the current series of polygons against the rules that we have and see, once we've had the data, even if it's current existence, if it meets the standards by which we have to set boundaries, right?
So there aren't current polygons because we haven't district before. So you will be seeing a map that is just kind of, think of the upside down T map that Kyle showed us in our presentation a couple of weeks ago. You'll essentially see that shape, but there's no polygons because this has not happened before.
Got it.
I think we do have the ability to do a lot of what if analysis. I think that's kind of what you're talking about, where you can draw a shape and see whether it gets us anywhere where we need to be, or if we're moving the right direction, the wrong direction. And the Esri software behind this has a lot of detail. Some detail we probably will never even look at because it may not be relevant to us, but things that are based on census data, demographic data, economic data, and so forth, so that we can be confident as we're shaping these polygons, making sure that they are contiguous and sized, again, properly in relation to one another, that we're also not skewing somehow the population in that particular polygon. So,
and just looking at that process, Naya, I'm guessing we'll be virtual, and you'll be doing, or we'll be sitting at a table and you'll do it. I'm just trying to understand with the 2 licenses, us almost out of COVID, not quite. Like, how do we envision us? Like, will we all be in the same room at the same time with paper maps and digital maps?
I do not know that we will have paper maps. If you guys want paper maps, I can see about getting paper maps. The intention is for us to all be in the same room because on July 1st, the open meetings law that was suspended by the governor will expire. So the intention is for us to be in the same room, and the map will be on the screen, and I will be controlling it from a laptop, and you all be able to see everything that I am doing on the laptop as we're all together.
Makes sense.
Are there any additional questions on GIS mapping for me?
Naya, I wonder if it might be possible or appropriate. The software that we're using is the Esri redistricting tool. And they actually have a pretty good website that talks in general about how it works and whatever. And I'm wondering if we could share that with the public as well. Just a general description of the tool, not specifically what we may have contracted for, but generally it gives kind of an overview. Would that be helpful? Is that something we can do?
I'm sure that's something that we can do. They will also be able to see when we do the demo at the meeting, they will also be able to see that as our meetings are all public.
Okay. Another thing to go into item 2.
You're muted, I think.
I keep forgetting. That's the quote.
It's tough.
2021, right? And this point came up during the meeting. When we look at the demographic categories, you know, are we prepared to disaggregate? I mean, the most obvious one is I just moved here from Algeria. By census data, I'm told to define myself as Caucasian. I may define myself as other and say Algerian American. Are we prepared to begin to look and disaggregate the data at that level, or what are our thoughts? I mean, Dave, you live in a community that's highly populated with new Americans, and you've probably heard some of this before. When I lived in Hilliard, it was an issue because Hilliard showed up on a census data as being 96% Caucasian. But then when you would drive around town, we had at least 50 stores with signs in Arabic. And what we learned is that folks from Palestine, from Iraq, they all identified as Caucasian. And so as we looked at the diversity of the city of Hilliard, we would often miss and underrepresent the Iraqi community. And social services, quite honestly, weren't initially meeting their needs, and then we kind of customized. And so I didn't know what we thought about what we might need to do to disaggregate or look closer at the existing demographic breakdown as we look at maps and who lives in what communities. Any thoughts? And it does. We don't have to have an answer right now.
I guess I would rephrase that, if I could, as a question for Ms. Walters. Are we charged with following the census definition strictly, as opposed to what we at least think we know about our neighborhoods and how the census categories may or may not really show a true picture of our neighborhoods? In doing this process, do we strictly need to follow what the census data tells us, or can we introduce any of our own experience and understanding?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. So the census data is primarily going to be used for population. It's not necessarily going to be used for ethnic and racial background and breakdown. Part of that that we should consider is that the Voting Rights Act allows race to be considered, but it cannot be a determining factor. So we want to kind of be thoughtful in our approach of how we are considering that breakdown. I will note that this survey does have in other categories. So if it doesn't fall into one of those categories that are listed, residents are able to put in whatever ethnicity they identify with in that survey.
It occurs to me perhaps the way we might be most sensitive to those, again, ethnic and racial characteristics and so forth, is just as we're drawing the lines, that we're not sort of carving out the corner of a group that has clearly become a settlement for a particular community. So not so much the determining what district they're in, but just in terms of laying out the polygons. So, okay.
Again, I just like to add, I think everyone knows here that, you know, last year was a very unique year with the pandemic. Census data is probably very underrepresented. And then given the political climate, I think a lot of our immigrant refugee populations were very hesitant to do the census. So again, we need to just keep that in mind as, you know, we think about these numbers and demographic data.
Again, I think it also speaks to the value of these intentional meetings we've created to go into new American communities and the beauty of the survey. And if I'm correct, I think SurveyMonkey has a built-in translating tool. Yeah, okay, good. These are all good things. And then the last item on the agenda, before I open it up for new business or additional thoughts, I've heard several questions one-on-one about open meeting processes and procedures. If we can talk to each other one-on-one, and so while we have legal counsel in the room, I kind of just want to get a clarification so we can be confident in how we engage each other outside of meetings or not to be in compliance. And so if there's a general rule you could give, not any specific legal advice about open meetings and what you would encourage a group like us that might have a check-in call we want to make. Naya, is there anything you could share?
The biggest piece of advice that I would share is to not discuss substantive business when you're not being recorded for public viewing. This is a public process, and so as part of that, we have to have minutes and things being shown that the public can view in a readily available medium. So anything that is substantive, I would suggest just waiting until we get to these meetings to talk about. Things that are logistical in nature, I think you are okay to discuss those things. Like if you're not gonna be able to be here on a certain day, or if you're having questions about the schedule, those are things that are okay to discuss. But things that are substantive in nature into the commission's business, I would just advise to not do that outside of our forum.
Thank you for that reminder and clarification. And so, commissioners, are there any other items that you wish to discuss at this time?
Yeah, I guess one thought or request, and I don't know. I think, as we prepare for next week's West Side meeting, again, just to get a sense of the different area commissions and the populations that are within each one. Like, it was really great to hear the Commissioner Chamberlain talk about, the Greater East Side Coalition, and that there's 115,000 residents in that. Obviously, that's split between 3 area commissions. Just to have that sense when we walk into whatever community that we're walking into. I don't know if that can be pulled before next week. I guess I'll let the city staff.
I could share a bit. This is a 50,000 foot sharing. So the Hilltop, so I'm part of the Greater Hilltop Area Commission, and Hilltop is a community of 70,000 people. And each of the civic associations that make up the area commission feel that Hilltop is too big of an area to be represented by one group. There's been a push to lift up the voices. Like, I live in the Highland West section of Hilltop. And so there's been a push to intentionally identify Highland West as Highland West, and other areas of Hilltop by that particular name, because the needs in each area are very different. So I'd imagine, well, what you're going to walk into with the Greater Hilltop Area Commission is an engaged group of people, selfless people who know the community well and care. They have data all the way down into the weeds, and they understand conceptually what's happening in Columbus. They have a finger on the pulse of the big project. There's great interest in the east-west corridor, how that could benefit development along Broad Street, bring safety to the community. Traffic safety and pedestrian safety will be something that definitely comes up. And then there's a level, and I find this to be an amazingly beautiful thing. Oftentimes people associate Hilltop with high levels of crime, and what folks want, and I heard a little bit echoed tonight on this East Side meeting, they don't want folks that are moving to the community to be criminalized for not knowing how to throw out trash, for doing things that are nuisance. They want to come up with ways to pull these people deeper into community. And the other big issues is so with that, they want landlords to be accountable. They want there to be affordable housing, but they want those who manage affordable housing to be accountable. And then a large number of absentee landlords, they want them held accountable as well. These are all things that I've heard. There's great pride in the Glenwood Recreation Center and the renovations that have been done there, movie nights. And so there's an underlying connected group of people in all the sections of Hilltop that collectively become the Greater Hilltop Area Commission. There's regularly scheduled neighborhood cleanups. There's, of course, you'll hear about Summer Jam West, which is like the anchor event on the west side. But housing stock, safety on Broad Street, and pedestrian safety crossing the street, and wanting to be a part of a larger Columbus plan to connect the east side and the west side, and then all the different nature and pathways, bike pathways, they want those to be attenuated, and many of the gyms on the west side to be celebrated. I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, that level, or you want other kinds of things related to the Hilltop.
I appreciate that context, Chair Moore, and I'm glad that we have a West Side expert with us next week. I think, the West Side, it can include the Hilltop. I mean, technically it'll include like the 5th by Northwest area. So I just would love to kind of know the different areas that we're dealing with, and I guess the population breakdown of the West Side beforehand, if that's possible.
I do not personally have that data, but I do know that the community engagement team does have info sheets that they send out before community meetings, so they may be able to provide more data that is more helpful to you going forward. So I can get with our community engagement folks and have them send that out.
Thank you.
If you have any
And
doubt,
I'm most recently from Northwest Columbus before I moved to the West Side. So I'd be
I was going to say, if you have any doubt that he knows the west side, you don't have any now. When we get to the north side, I can share the similar perspective in Northland, but we need to keep in mind there are other neighborhoods on the north side and on the west side that we don't always think of when we're thinking about the major neighborhoods. So we do need to keep that in mind, make sure they have a voice. I'm sure the Department of Neighborhoods can help us also with some data and so forth about the associations and large groups there. So thank you.
And if there's no new business from the commissioners or any of our guests, I think at this time we go ahead and adjourn. I don't want to leave you guys yet, so I don't want to call the meeting over. So are we sure nobody has anything that they need to share or want to offer? All right. Since we have no one with anything, I guess we have to adjourn. And until next Wednesday, I'll see you all then. Thank you. This meeting is